So there was this U.S. operation in Venezuela recently, right? And on the surface, it seems pretty straightforward. But to really get what's going on, you have to look past the single tactical move and see the statement it makes about the rules of the entire global game.
Okay, so from a purely military point of view, the source material we're looking at calls this thing a masterstroke. I mean, a stunning success. The execution was precise, it was effective, it was, in short, a flawless tactical move.
But here's the thing. A tactical win is great, but it immediately opens up a whole can of worms, you know? Winning one battle doesn't mean you've won the war. So what does this move actually mean for the bigger picture, for that global chessboard and the future of world order?
All right, so to really unpack all this, here's our game plan. We'll start with that tactical victory and the tricky situation it created. Then we'll look at it all through 3 different lenses. That's going to lead us to question the whole idea of international law. And from there, we have to talk about what really rules the game, power. And finally, we'll hit the big one. Is an action like this a cause of all the chaos in the world, or is it a consequence of it?
Okay, first up, let's dig into what happened right after the operation. See, a successful mission doesn't always mean a clean, simple outcome. In this case, it actually created a really complex and pretty risky situation on the ground.
Right, and here's the key thing to get. The operation didn't actually topple the Venezuelan government. Think of it like a game of Jenga. A really important block was pulled out, but the whole shaky tower was left standing. And that creates this high-stakes dilemma, right? You've got a potential power vacuum, a ton of instability, and no clear idea of what happens next.
So, how do we even begin to make sense of something this complex? Well, you can't just look at it from one angle. The source material suggests we really need to analyze it through 3 totally distinct lenses.
And these are pretty much the 3 ways any country looks at a big global event. First, you've got the lens of international law, treaties, the official rulebook. Second, there's the moral lens, which asks, what's the right thing to do here? And then third, there's the cold, hard lens of power and what's best for your own national interest. And spoiler alert, these 3 things are almost always in conflict with each other.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that first lens, the law. Because a huge part of this argument is that the whole idea of international law is way more fragile, way more political than most of us think.
You know, we all have this dream, this ideal of a world that's governed by a clear set of rules that every country agrees to follow. It sounds great, right? But the reality, especially today, is a world that's driven by competition, rivalry, and pure self-interest, where the rules often take a back seat.
So, why is it so weak? Well, think about it. Unlike the laws inside a country, there's no world constitution, there's no global police force to call, there's no world Supreme Court with the final say. Treaties? They're totally voluntary, and whether they get enforced or not depends entirely on the political will of powerful countries, and that is never a guarantee.
And hey, what about the UN Security Council, the most powerful body on the planet? Well, it was never designed to be a court. It's a political body through and through. The decisions it makes just reflect the alliances, the rivalries, and the strategic interests of its big-shot permanent members.
And that really is the fundamental reality. The Security Council runs on politics. If your allies have your back, the law can be pretty flexible. But if your rivals are against you, that same law can be turned into a weapon against you. It's not some neutral referee.
And you can actually see this whole dynamic play out over the last few decades. There was this short, kind of unique moment in the 1990s, right after the Cold War ended, where everyone was on the same page. You saw it with the unanimous action in the first Gulf War. The last real gasp of that cooperation was right after 9/11. But today, we are back to an era of intense rivalry, where getting everyone to agree on anything is pretty much impossible.
And a huge part of the problem is that the whole system was designed for a different era. It was built for when tanks rolled across borders. It just doesn't have good answers for modern threats, like a terror network hiding out in a failed state, or a government that basically acts like a criminal organization. The rulebook is just decades out of date.
Okay, so if the legal system is so shaky, what takes its place? What fills that void? And that brings us to our third lens, pure, unfiltered power.
And this really gets to the core of power politics. When there's no effective referee on the field, what you can do often becomes way more important than what you're technically allowed to do. It all comes down to a nation's capabilities and its will to actually use them.
And this is where a really crucial argument about scale comes in. The source makes the point that, yeah, a lot of countries break international norms, but not all of those violations are the same. A targeted, limited operation to capture one person is worlds apart from a full-scale invasion designed to literally erase a country from the map, or a claim to just absorb an entire population. The sheer scale and nature of the action matters a lot.
Which brings us to probably the most critical question of all. Are actions like this one in Venezuela the cause of the breakdown in world order, or are they a consequence of a system that has already failed?
The analysis lays out this chain of events. It goes like this. First, the international system fails to deal with a really serious threat. Then, the people of a country start to feel like the rules aren't working for them, that the system is actually unjust. And that feeling creates an opening for a leader to rise up by promising to put national interests first, even if it means breaking those old rules.
Now, a common criticism you'll hear all the time is that by acting alone, the US is setting a dangerous precedent. That it's basically giving a green light to rivals like Russia and China to do whatever they want. But is that really how it works?
Well, the source material offers a pretty provocative counter-argument. It says that this view totally misunderstands what actually motivates these revisionist powers, the countries that want to change the global order. The effect might be the exact opposite of what the critics are worried about.
Okay, let's break this down. First, countries like Russia and China don't wait around for permission slips. They act when they believe they're ready and have the capability. Second, an operation like this shows off a level of military precision and resolve that might just make those adversaries think twice. And finally, maybe most importantly, it sends a clear signal that the US is willing to play by the same hardball, power-based rules that its rivals have been using for years. So instead of making them bolder, it might actually make them more cautious.
And that really brings us to the main takeaway of this whole analysis. The idea of a stable, rules-based world? It's been falling apart for a long time now. An action like this isn't what's shattering the peace. It's a move that basically acknowledges that the game has already changed, and it's being played on a much, much rougher field now.
So we're left with this final, really challenging question. On this new global chessboard, where the old rules are fading away, does a decisive show of strength actually deter conflict and create a new kind of stability? Or does it just hit the accelerator on a slide into a more chaotic and unpredictable world? That is the huge strategic gamble that's being played out right now in real time.